Everyone, hi ladies from Feminine Fire Society, how are you? I'm happy to be on today. It's early afternoon here in New Zealand. We had such a beautiful sunny day. And I've been meaning to come on earlier, but again, things kind of, I don't want to say they come in the way, but I felt guided to do other things. And I've been doing a lot of writing this morning as I've been taking my interpreting calls as well. So they always tend to come in when you least expect it, and I try to answer as many as I can. You know what I want to share with you today? I want to share a topic which is relevant to a lot of us. And it's a feeling that, hi Yvonne, nice to see you. It's a feeling that a lot of women carry, and a lot of a lot of us don't know why we sort of tend to respond in certain ways in relationships. And a deep-seated wound is actually the wound of abandonment. And a lot of women have somehow lived through this feeling of abandonment from either, whether your parents divorced when you were younger, even at an older age, or when your mother tried to stop you with breastfeeding, or maybe you did not even get or receive milk from your mother, and somehow you could have lived, something internal that kind of sparked that feeling of being abandoned. And so what I want to share with you today is, what I want to, converse with you about today is the topic on abandonment, and how does that show up in our life? How do we as women show up in our relationships, in our life, as a wounded woman, and that keeps reliving that wound of abandonment. So what comes up and what has come up through my research and through self-inquiry is, and it's more prominent in some women than others, is when you stop, is when you're very eager to make people feel comfortable, right? But you actually put their comfort before your own. Now tell me if you have lived most of your life making sure that other people around you have felt more comfortable than yourself. Now you might ask, how do I know that I'm not actually self-serving, and I'm serving other people as well, and making sure, that I'm a good host, that I'm, supporting my friends and my family? How do you know? And that's a good point. Like, how do you know that you have somehow have found a balance between the two of, like, putting your needs first, and at the same time, being of service to others, which is what I believe makes us whole human beings, right? It's when you've been able to take care of your initial needs, your primary needs, and that's why you are able to be present for your loved ones, right? Hi, Madeline, nice to see you. So this is a really good topic about abandonment. Now, the first thing that's come up for me during, my research and my reflection is being a people pleaser. So when you are living in a state of pleasing another person, it means that you are constantly driven by the need of, or really carrying the sense of responsibility towards others, because you live in the fear that you always have an agenda when you are doing something, and the agenda is on you. So you feel that if you are not self-pleasing, if you're not pleasing someone, you are then going to be, they will then take their love away from you, which could have resulted in that as a child, when your mother's milk was taken away from you, or when you stopped, being breastfed, or when your father left you, or anything like that. So you relive that sense of abandonment. So you hold on tight. So remember, I always, I do use the analogy a lot of holding onto the rope. So it's like you're holding onto this rope, you're not letting go, and your identity, it's like your primal instinct comes up, where you feel that if you do let go of this rope, if you do kind of give space to yourself, to listen to yourself and what your needs are, you literally feel like you're going to be dying, you're going to lose your life. So that's at a primary level. But you do feel in danger, and that's why you're constantly in this rut, and this is why you run on empty. A lot of women tend to run on empty, serving other people, whether it's your children, your husband, because there's healthy ways to be of service, and there's very unhealthy ways to be of service as well. Okay, so I've written down a few things that can help you. So a few affirmations that you can use with yourself. But in order to, before you use the affirmations, I just want to complete the conversation that I'm having with you. Okay. So the first one, the first aspect was, people pleasing, and also feelings of guilt. So you also carry within the process of, needing to be latched on to them and being of service to them, that if you are not, then you are carrying all these feelings of guilt, or actually waking up. So feel free to ask questions, Yvonne, Madeline, whoever's online, if anything does show up for you, if anything has actually showed up in your life. So are you living in fear of abandonment? This is such a big thing. So there are signs that shows you actually if you are living in fear of abandonment. And, the way that you can move past it is, first of all, actually being conscious about the way that you really are responding in social scenarios when you are with people, because that's where you see the true person. That's where your true person comes out. It's when you are with other people. Now, when you are centered, when you are strong within yourself, you are allowing, in every moment, in every instance, when you are with other people, every instant is an opportunity for you to see who you are, to see, you see the way that you are operating with them. But you must allow this, you must create this space around your heart, right, in your subconscious, in your consciousness, to see, to reflect, to feel before you respond, right? Otherwise you'd be reacting, and you'll be responding in impulse, which means responding by impulse means that you're simply acting in fear. So the space that I mentioned is essential for you to create that, for all of us to create the space, to have the space, because this is a space where you allow, nobody can mess with that. Nobody can mess with that space that you create within yourself. And that space you can cultivate when you do your meditation, or when you allow yourself to sit in contemplation over something. And a recent thing, I want to share this with you, a recent thing that I sort of managed to bring up in my recent time is the lack of, I was trying to understand within myself, especially in this time that I do feel more grounded after visiting the marae. And even though I've done a lot of work on myself, but there's just so many layers that we can actually work, with ourselves. So one thing that came up was about the belief about money. And that's been a massive thing for me, because the belief about money, it came up because, okay, so what happens is when you work on yourself, when you cultivate the space, I just want to go back to what I started. So when you cultivate the space, you're creating space to allow whatever needs to be worked through, whatever needs to come out for you to work through. You will see it, you will feel it, you will sense it. Okay, and you need to be grounded in order to, because if you're up and in the air, you're not going to, all these feelings are going to be all jumbled up, and you're not going to be able to identify what it is. It's really kind of like holding you back. But when you're grounded, you do see it. And it comes up mostly when you have this space, when you are cultivating the space. To cultivate this space, it's all about devotion and dedication, which is everything to do with a feminine energy, right? So it's taking the time aside with yourself, for yourself, to get to know you, to nurture yourself, to nurture your soul, right? So, so one thing that came up for me was actually the poverty consciousness around money, which is really interesting, because I grew up in my family, and I have to say I've always had everything in my life, right? Like I've never really lacked. I've always had really good food. I've always lived in really good homes, and I feel blessed for that, because I know a lot of people didn't grow up with a lot of abundance around them. But I questioned myself. I had to ask myself, Vanessa, what is it that is bringing all these thoughts about you with money? And then I had to backtrack, and I started to get all these flashes. And, money consciousness, poverty consciousness, that's all to do with like your sense of worth. And, the sense of worth also obviously is related to how much you're valuing yourself. So I value myself enough to take care of my needs before I take care of your needs, right? because I know that I'm worth it. So it's all kind of, it all has to do with, levels of self-worth that we hold within ourselves. But yeah, so back to the consciousness about, money. What started to come to me, why is it so dark? Jesus, I think it's the lighting in front of me. I might have to close the curtains. So it was all, what started to come to me was all the voices that I started to remember. All the voices that were used against me growing up, and identifying those voices and understanding what was mine and what wasn't mine. And and part of me, as I've been trying to understand what it is that, layers, things do reveal themselves when it's the right time for you to kind of work through that, and when you're searching for it. So this is one of the recent things that have come up for me. So with finances, I realized, like, my mum always had, money. She's got so many properties. My father, same thing, always good food. Abundance, always people over for dinner, for lunch. So there's never been poverty in that sense, but there was poverty in consciousness within the way that they were making the money and the living, which is very interesting, right? Because richness and wealth is not only about what is apparent from the outside, but it's actually the way in which you are operating and making your money, the energy that you are putting in when you are making your money, right? So I always felt very uncomfortable talking about money as an adult, because I had to, think back as to why. I started to ask myself questions recently, especially because I, targeted whatever needed to be worked through. And what came up was, and I am kind of sidetracking, what came up was identifying these voices, and that was the biggest. So identifying the voices, what was mine, what wasn't mine. And I don't know, just slipped now. I don't know. I think I'm just kind of sidetracking. I don't want to go too far out of the topic of abandonment. It was just a massive, like, light bulb for me. And I've been writing so much on this because it's quite scary if we think about the stories that are actually managing your subconscious. And this is why this inner work is so crucial and it's so important. Now, if we go back, let's just go back to the abandonment topic, right? So if you are living with a fear of abandonment, you are living a life in service of others and not in service of yourself. So let me just rephrase everything. So number one is, first of all, look at how you are. If you're wanting to detect how, if you are living in people pleasing, start detecting how you are. Are you overly making people feel overly comfortable when they're around you, or are you making sure that your needs are taken care of before you give compliments, and you make sure that other people are taken care of around you? Okay, so I'm not saying to not, but I'm saying to at what point, like, is it excessively, is your attention excessively put on them, or do you make sure that you are in a comfortable space? Are you nurturing yourself and then being present to others? So there's a difference, okay? Then also the feelings of guilt. Man, we're so good at, bringing up that guilt. So notice if you have feelings of guilt that come up. And, if you do choose to connect with me, to work with me, I will show you how to get rid of, by connecting to certain energy channels in your body, how to get rid of all these emotions of guilt, and how to clear it, and how to recharge your body, and nurturing your body with positive life force and good energy. So feelings of guilt, and then also building the space around you. So building the space around you, and making sure that you are listening to yourself in that space. Now, that space nobody can mess with. In that space, you know what it looks like? It's that silence. It's that hesitation in response, right? It's that moment that you are not, like, jumping at responding, like being reactive. When somebody makes a joke that you may not like, you could probably find humor in that. Finding the humor, that's when you are in a space where you give yourself the space to, see the humor in that, or knowing the truth. When you use humor, I feel that when I use humor is because I see the truth of the situation. I know who I am, therefore I'm able to laugh at something because it's, the way that the other person is perceiving. I don't know if I'm making sense to you. It does make sense to me, but I'm not sure whether it's making sense to you. Um, and finally, feeling all your emotions. So within that space, you are allowing yourself to feel all those emotions. Are you angry? Are you feeling hilarious? Do you just want to laugh, take a big laugh? Do you want to not say anything? Do you just want to withdraw? Do you want to speak your mind? Do you want to comment on how on the other person's view? Do you want to ask a question in response to their remark? So you can choose within that space how you decide to lead the conversation, which is very interesting. And within that, you can decide within that conversation that you decide to have, that lead of conversation, you also can choose, you can decide how you choose to respond, and whether you are acting from a space of like abandonment or not. And it does take time to identify these areas in our life, but when you do identify them, you can always work through them. And the first step is obviously building awareness on that. Okay, so I would suggest, honestly, these are really good pieces of information that I'm giving today. So do take notes. Just sketch, something very brief, and then notice yourself if you do find that you have these feelings of insecurity. If you are living with levels of insecurity, why not start to ask yourself whether it's a possibility that you have this deep-seated wound of abandonment, and to not worry about this, because it's natural because we have all been influenced by our environments. But just because we've been influenced, it doesn't mean that we cannot find and connect to our own truth, right? So if you do have any questions, I would just ask you to just open up. Now, a few affirmations. You can say, I stop making others feel comfortable and pleasing others, to the extent, obviously, of ignoring yourself, right? So that's one. I don't carry guilt. That's a very powerful one. Also, I take the space that I need. Like, you are honoring your time and your space. I take the space I need, and I feel all my emotions. So you are giving yourself in that time and that space, you are giving yourself permission to feel all of those emotions. So as you are feeling them, you are within that space, and then you can choose to respond however you want to respond. No one's chasing you with a gun where you need to give a response immediately, right? That's being overactive, reactive, that's acting in impulse, and which is exactly what I'm not suggesting, to kind of work through this wound of people pleasing and feelings of abandonment. Hi Jody, welcome. So it's incredible how much we can actually move through. We can work through ourselves when we're in tune with our body, when we know how to make these observations. And this is everything I teach you. So I feel that with so much coaching that is out there, people don't give you enough. I don't think a lot of people know actually how to work through a lot of these emotions. I'll be honest with you. And a lot of people give you like certain steps to follow, which it doesn't necessarily work for everyone else. Or people need like they probably need missing the initial phase of like actually knowing how to get to the point where you know how to take those steps that you can kind of work through those issues, right? So if you do want to know more about how you can work on yourself, how you can dig deeper to understand where where those limiting beliefs are that are causing you to not living in your full potential, right? Because that sucks. Like, if you know that you can live in your full potential, then why wouldn't you want to find out what is actually holding you back, right? You need to be ready for it. I feel that I honestly feel it's to do with timing. And like I was sharing before when I was sidetracking to this topic, poverty consciousness, like with me, I always felt like, even though I always feel very blessed and lucky to have grown up, with the best foods, with the best homes, with the best clothes and perfumes and jewelry, I still feel like I lacked that confidence of knowing how to provide money for myself, even though I've earned a lot of money in the past, even though um, I have a career of my own. But it was actually the confidence with which I stood my ground and knowing that I was capable and able to be financially independent the way that I wanted to. And the root of that actually came from the belief system within my generation about money, because, our family, a lot of our family, they came from the war. So a lot of families had to build their life. They had to make food, like literally they had to grow the food to eat it, to nourish their bodies. They had to work for it. They didn't just comfortably go to the supermarket and have all the selections that we have now. So this poverty consciousness is actually, don't take all the blame for yourself. These conditionings that have been passed on from generations back, right? And I was thinking I wanted to share with you that, coming from a very wealthy family, I struggled with knowing how to manage money. And that doesn't mean that I haven't saved money, that I haven't earned money, that I haven't made money, but it does. But it really conditioned my whole outlook on how, on my wealth consciousness, right, with finances, because there was so much conflict around money when I grew up. My parents being in business, every time there was, conversations about money. There's a point in why I'm sharing this is because I invite you to have a look at, your history as well. We don't have to live in history, but we can ponder on it, we can reflect on it to understand our present, right? So for me, it meant, really seeing how my parents what relationship they had with money. And I know there was always a lot of conflict whenever we needed to get our paycheck, whenever we worked in the business, or whenever my father needed to pay for ours, for us when we were little and we couldn't, provide for ourselves. He would always fight with my mum with the money that he had to give me and my sister. So there was always a lot of fear around money. There was always a lot of fear around making money, about keeping money, about spending money. And I see that a lot. My God, and ever since I've had this realization, oh my God, I thank God to have the awareness to be able to make that distinction now. To the point where I know when I'm asked certain questions by my mom or my father, I know exactly when to say, please don't ask me that question. I know how to manage this, that, or the other, because I don't want the insecurity voices like coming in to to come through and affect my belief system, right? But I can see it, I can nip it in the bud, and then I can still, go on having a normal conversation with him as opposed to being reactive, getting into conflict and what have you. So that is the power of knowing yourself. That is the power that lays when we know ourselves, we can identify and detect these voices. And to do that, we need to dig a bit and go a bit in the past and see what conditioned our belief system, what conditioned our thoughts. And it resulted that everything I was told when I was younger about money, she can't make money, she spends it before she earns it. None of it was true. It was just their belief that, to make money, you had to work morning till night, and you couldn't spend anything, you just had to save. So I definitely didn't live that life. But I certainly, as an adult, fell into the trap of believing that that's where my worth laid, right? That's where my birth, that's when I would be worthy, right? When I was working at that rate, when I was earning that amount of money, which is a whole big fat lie. So I encourage you to, today this video is all about uncovering your lies, connecting with your past, with the voices that were used against you, and to find your truth within that. If you do need support with that, do get in contact with me, PM me personally, privately. There is so much freedom when you move past those voices. Poverty consciousness can show up not only with finances. Poverty consciousness can show up with your health, can show up in the way that you are with your presence, with the way that you show up, with the way that you interact with people, right? You can have been made guilty for having fun and for being playful. So whatever you're depriving of yourself today is actually a limiting belief that you have taken on that does not belong to you, or it's a lie that you've made up in your head, It could be an energy that you've picked up that is not yours. So I want you to get to the bottom of the lies that you've been carrying, and just give yourself a lot of love, and find your truth in that. Find your truth in that, and beam the light, shine the light that is within you with your truth, not other people's lies, right? And bless my parents for everything they have done, because they've carried on their generational crap, right? That they probably haven't found a way to kind of work through. But I feel so blessed that I've given myself the time to discover my truth, to discover who I am, so that I can also know, so that I know how to respond to them, and I don't feed into the fears, and I don't feed into the lies, right? And I catch myself. So it's not that I'm perfect, but I know how to catch myself, and then I can rewrite my script, right? And live and vibrate in that essence of my truth, so that that frequency and that vibration can attract, that allows me to attract into my life more of who I am. Okay, so we're not living in the limiting beliefs of our parents or of our generation and what have you. Okay, so I don't know who's on still, but I really wanted to share this, and this is something I'm actually writing a chapter on this in my book. It's so exciting. The more I'm writing, the more things are coming out. All these memories are coming out of when I was a child, and the more of those memories are coming out, the more I just feel like, you know, cradling that little girl inside of me, because I was made to believe so many lies, you know, and within that I've got so much compassion. I don't hold anger. Yeah, I mean, it pisses me off, but like, I don't know, it's like that within that space I have so much awareness and consciousness that I'm just pouring out so much compassion in that space of to think what, from the space of consciousness, you know, they're operating from, in order to use certain words towards a little girl or towards someone that is young, that is learning about life, and that, you know, that is taking an example from their parents, you know. So you know, there's so much compassion and love that goes to, you know, to these people, to my family, and, you know, to whoever needs that compassion. And I just thank God every day. I live in gratitude to have given me the time, the space, the consciousness to detect everything, and to pour love over it, and to then be strong enough and courageous enough to create a life by my design, right? To actually respond by my choice. So I choose how to respond. You can choose. You choose how you respond to people, to situations. And please get back to me. Let me know if whatever I'm talking about now is actually resonating with you, whether it's today, whether it's tomorrow, in the next few days. It's really important that we gain dominion of our space. It's within that sacred space that I was talking about with Kay Ehrlich as well in the last video, that we really delve into our own identity, or essence, really, more than identity, right? And that allows us to bring more play into life. Imagine if you had to react to every comment, to every insult that was made to you, right? It would be exhausting. So allow yourself to play more and to enjoy your interactions. Okay, when you know yourself, you know that you can. I'm going to send you a lot of love, and I'll come back if I do within the next few days. You know that I always show up when I feel there's something from the heart that I need to share. But in the meantime, I'm going to be getting ready. I've got my belly dancing class. I've got 2 hours tonight, and I really desire for you to have a wonderful day or evening or a good rest wherever you are in the world. Okay, bye now.